From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Andre Sims. Cronkite News is dedicated to covering public policy and legislative affairs across Arizona. Tonight, a look at some of our top coverage on the government and justice beat.
More than 1 million Arizonans voted in the primaries, yet our state still has what a recent study has coined a voter crisis. Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein looked deeper into what this means ahead of the general election in November.
Because if we don't vote, then we're just absolutely just losing it and to another party.
Eileen Dobson is one of many who voted in the Arizona primary. A recent study called Arizona's Voter Crisis, authored by Arizona State University's Morrison Institute for Public Policy, states that on average, our state ranked 43rd in national voter turnout. Our state also has just more than a 58% voter turnout on average, the report says. Senior research fellow with the Morrison Institute, David Doherty, says there is a high proportion of ethnic minorities in the state who are less likely to vote.
Really, we are electing officials and making decisions about propositions and initiatives based on a non-representative group of the adult population. That group who votes is significantly older, better educated, more affluent, and whiter. That is, from an ethnicity point of view.
Doherty says one way to stop the crisis is by teaching high school students about voting.
Where these people who are right on the verge of registering to vote are sold on the fact that their vote makes a difference.
Dobson says having a voice is important.
And I think it is important that we at least express our views and opinions.
In Phoenix, Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
And with an influx of on-campus students in downtown Phoenix, the city is following a national trend in making the area more friendly to pedestrians. As Charisma Sandoval reports, one Valley community says improvements to sidewalks and storefronts are building community and the local economy.
Drivers rule the road, except for a few blocks along 1st Street in downtown Phoenix. The city widened sidewalks, planted 125 shade trees, and the street narrowed to 1 lane between McKinley and Moreland Street. Neighborhood leader Vermone Pierre said residents now have the space to talk to each other without the interference of heavy traffic.
We have sidewalks and benches and other places that we can participate in and invest in, and I just encourage us to continue to tell that story, to continue to build the downtown community that we love so much.
City officials hope business storefronts catch the eye of customers walking by. A study by George Washington University found places with high levels of walkability see an increase in revenue and spending. Cameo Wilson says that's the reason she just opened a walk-up window on 1st Street, where she sells smoothies and fruit bowls.
It's really convenient for people to just be walking down the street on this nice new sidewalk with tons of new parking.
Improvements have attracted more businesses and a steady flow of customers, says Jim McPherson, a member of the local neighborhood association.
You now have spaces that are now filling in. There's an increased interest, like this building here, of coming in the community.
Pierre believes this project helps the Roosevelt community.
This is a community that's creative, that's inclusive, and that's connected.
Phoenix is joining cities like Detroit and Los Angeles in the top tier of metros, claiming the changes are enhancing pedestrian life and boosting economies. In Phoenix, Charisma Sandoval, Cronkite News.
Deputy City Manager Mario Peniagua said they are considering 3 other projects like the 1st Street improvements in Central and North Phoenix.
It began as an assignment in a college photography class, but turned into something way more meaningful. Reporter Gabriela Becerra introduces us to one Valley photographer whose work with the homeless led to a gallery of characters.
1, 2, 3.
Samuel McDonald is a photographer and a former employee at Andre House, a ministry to the poor and homeless in downtown Phoenix.
All right, good lighting.
Now he volunteers his time to take black and white portraits of guests at the Andre House. For many, this is the first or only photo they have of themselves.
It's nice to hear from people say like, oh, like, I really love the pictures I have of myself now.
Terry Clark says this will be the first photo with his dog named Dirt.
When she passes, I'll still have a loving memory of my dog. And other people can see how it was with my dog. pretty, huh? So pretty, daddy girl.
The portraits hang on a wall leading into the dining room in the Andre house.
The idea of, hey, let's bring our guests in and like put portraits of them on the walls and make them feel like there's something that is worthy of being photographed.
Over the years, the photo collage has grown and the people have come and gone.
On any given day, it could be the last time you see one of our guests for either a bad reason or a good one.
Each photograph comes with its own story.
We used to call him Dave the Butler. That's what he preferred to be called because he's always helping people out if you needed something. He passed away last year. And that was one of those times where like my work that I do now and my work here at Andre House kind of intertwined.
McDonald now works as a death investigator for the Maricopa County Office of the Medical Examiner.
The detective called me and said, hey, can you come out to this thing that's happened? And I was like, all right, sure. So I get out there, and it turned out to actually be him. So that was a little bit strange.
McDonald has also seen lives change for the better. The first time Wilfredo Gonzalez had his photo taken by McDonald was as a guest.
You know, he really liked it too. He do it like with his heart.
Now, when Gonzalez has his photo taken, it's as an employee of the Andre house.
It was a big surprise, you know, they was interested in the job I do. So, and I become one of them.
Although he can't find them all, 3 of the photos of Gonzalez now hang on the wall.
My another photo, for some kind of reason, it disappeared from here. Probably I have a fans.
In downtown Phoenix, Gabriela Becerra, Cronkite News.
Since leaving the Andre house, McDonald still comes by to take photos every once in a while. He will post signs around Andre house letting people know when he will be setting up. Guests can usually pick up their photos the next day.
For some, educating themselves on those running for office isn't as easy as logging on to a website. Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein shows us how one nonprofit organization is helping voters who can't see or hold a book.
Volunteers of Sun Sounds of Arizona read printed material to those who cannot read or hold printed material due to a disability. Now it's providing an audio guide to voters across the state.
Well, I don't know. It's just what it is. It's you know, I'm a happy person.
Connie Ryan works here at Sun Sounds of Arizona as an assistant volunteer coordinator. She has been blind her entire life.
Well, I haven't lived it all yet, but so far, yes.
Sun Sounds of Arizona provides an audio voter guide for voters like Ryan, who might not be able to read or otherwise access information about what is on the ballot.
To tell you the truth, it was a service that needed to be done.
Sun Sounds of Arizona Director Andrea Pasquale says when someone wants to find out what the candidate's statements are, they dial into the service.
And it gives them options. Do they want to hear state candidates? Do they want their local legislative district? And then they just take it from there and punch in the numbers.
Ryan says she used the service for the primary elections.
For a service like this is easier. I don't have access to a computer at home. I do here, but not at home. And at home I can listen to the voter guide and I'm used to listening that way.
Ryan says it is important for everyone to vote.
It is our responsibility to pick our government. There are a lot of government programs and things that help people with disabilities, and we want to vote the people that sympathize with us in if we can.
Sun Sounds of Arizona is currently in the process of updating the current Clean Elections voter guide for the general election, and they anticipate the updates will be done by the end of this week. In the broadcast center, Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
After distressed hikers, fallen rock climbers, or stranded backpackers call 911, the rescue mission may fall into the hands of Central Arizona Mountain Rescue. As Sammy Gieber reports, many members of the group were inspired to join after they themselves needed help in the backcountry.
High-risk rescue missions take an entire team to pull off.
The goal of today is to give everybody a little more information on what the team is all about.
Which is why Central Arizona Mountain Rescue is looking for new recruits.
We hope that you have an interest and to turn in an application. They're airborne. They should be here in 90 seconds or so.
With about 60 missions per year in Maricopa County, members are called away from their regular jobs and even their families.
Have you ever seen a helicopter that close before?
Because the entire team, including Garrett Griggs, father of two, are volunteers.
Binoculars?
Yeah. There's people who need help, who didn't expect to need help.
Oh, Garrett is just full of life. You know, he's an energizer buddy that does not stop.
That may be because Garrett was on the other side of a rescue mission years ago.
It's supposed to be a day trip. And we started early in the morning, and we got to Four Peaks, and we began the hike.
That's only it.
Eventually, he and his friends found themselves on a mountain and couldn't get down.
After I was rescued, it's hard to use that word still. After I was helped, I asked about the team. I asked about who they were. Why are y'all here? Who are you?
Red line ready. Griggs joined the nonprofit and hasn't turned back since.
As much as 50% of the team either had some kind of event in their life where they're maybe a fire crew or another mountain rescue team went out and helped them in the backcountry.
When the team isn't rappelling down caves, braving flowing waters, or airlifting out a group of 20 high schoolers.
Yeah, so it was definitely one for the books.
They're often working as law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, or other service members.
At the heart of it, every single member just really is community oriented, and they want to give back to their community.
In Phoenix, Sammy Giebers, Cronkite News.
Jensen says that the Superstition and White Tanks areas are where the rescue team frequents the most. He says that the sooner a distressed hiker calls, the better, and that all the services the nonprofit provides are free.
The program involves speakers who have brain injuries themselves so that officers can have a better understanding on how they can handle the situation.
A Valley group that helps troubled veterans get off the streets and into homes and jobs is expanding. John Cardinelli is in the broadcast center to show us the impact.
The group U.S. Vets plans to expand their facilities this October to be able to house more than 200 veterans. They offer a helping hand to those in desperate situations.
I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I just didn't want to exist. You know, I was depressed. I would hope not to wake up in the morning.
Edward Welch is a United States veteran and found himself living on the Phoenix streets 10 years ago.
I was sleeping behind Circle K on 32nd Street in Van Buren. Some guy found me, asked me if I was a veteran. I told him yeah, and next thing you know, I was staying at U.S. Vets.
U.S. Vets is a nonprofit organization with one objective: to serve those who served.
We're here to help homeless veterans get back to permanent housing and get back to a productive life. So what we do here is we offer case management services and any other support that they need to get into housing, to get jobs.
Kevin Whitmore is currently in the program. Living at U.S. Vets has given him all the essentials.
They have helped me gain really control of my life again. So that means dental. They provided me home and housing.
The program also places them in classes, ranging from how to deal with PTSD, addiction, and even how to find a job.
You know, they actually showed me how to make a resume, and I still use that today. Matter of fact, the job I have, the resume that I made in U.S. Vets then, that's the same one I use today. I just update it on a regular basis.
The current job Welch has mirrors that of the man that saved his life 10 years ago. He's an outreach coordinator at U.S. Vets.
My job is to go out and find different resources and that can provide services for these homeless veterans. You may find me in soup kitchens, food banks, different shelters, going to find those veterans to try and get them into transitional housing so they can get the opportunity to get those crucial tools that I got.
Welch says he took the job at U.S. Vets to give hope to his fellow brothers who served. There are still more than 200 homeless veterans in Maricopa County that could use transitional assistance. In the broadcast center, John Cardinelli, Cronkite News.
Every night, St. Vincent de Paul's dining room floor turns into an overflow shelter for people that have nowhere else to sleep. At the end of this month, the overflow is closing. Reporter Gabriella Becerra tells us what the shelter is doing to help occupants find a more permanent solution.
For the past 2 years, there has been an average of 250 people a night at this overflow shelter. So when they decided to close their doors in April, St. Vincent de Paul took it upon itself to find a place for these occupants to go.
The overflow was pretty good a lot of times, you know.
Gary Hughes used to stay at St. Vincent de Paul's overflow shelter before they announced it was closing back in April.
There's a lot of freedom there because all you had to do is just basically stand outside of where St. Vincent de Paul is, a restaurant there on campus, and then, you know, when the gates open, then you could go on in, and then the mats were already laid out.
The first come, first serve shelter has been in constant function for the past 2 years. Now funders are looking for solutions more permanent than mats on a dining room floor.
We didn't have the funding or the community support on our own to keep this kind of Band-Aid going.
Chief Program Officer Jessica Berg says St. Vincent de Paul has been working to find housing and shelters for overflow occupants.
It seemed like the most responsible, humane way to work with a group of folks and also not have 250 people with nowhere to go on October 1st.
Berg says 201 have found housing or alternative shelter options. They're helping 28 remaining people find other options this week. Hughes found a spot at St. Vincent de Paul's Ozanam Manor, a transitional shelter for men and women over 50.
This place does good too here.
The overflow shelter will close on September 30th. The dining hall will not be affected by this closure. In the broadcast center, Gabriela Becerra, Cronkite News.
The Air Force is currently experiencing a pilot shortage. Here in Arizona, Luke Air Force Base is feeling the effects.
Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein tells us how various initiatives across the state are playing their part to combat the shortage.
Luke Air Force Base is primarily a training base. That means having fewer pilots has a serious impact in terms of being ready for potential missions. Currently, there are only 58 instructor pilots filling out 84 available spots for F-16 fighter jets. For the F-35 fighter jets, they only have 85 out of 101 instructor pilots. This has led to high school students coming from all parts of the state to train in different areas impacted by this pilot shortage. Every day at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, pilots are training to fly F-16 and F-35 fighter jets.
And just getting up in the air, that feeling that you get in your stomach.
South Mountain High School senior Jaja Obasi says he'd like to follow in their footsteps one day.
And then just watching as everything gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
For now, he's taking part in his high school's aerospace program. But although Obasi and other student pilots are hoping their aviation careers take off, the Air Force is experiencing a pilot shortage. At Luke Air Force Base, which is mainly a training base, the primary concern is staffing instructor pilots. Air Force officials say that after 8 to 10 years, pilots in training often leave, looking for better ways to balance their work and family life.
Right now, we don't have enough of certain types of pilots to actually account for all the jobs that we need to do in the Air Force. So those can be anything from here in the front line of actually flying aircraft all the way to kind of the staff jobs that require pilot knowledge as a background to be able to do the job.
He also says another cause of the pilot shortage is aircraft availability, with maintenance playing a big role. That's because the number of pilots that can train depends on the number of aircraft available. 2 hours away, in Tucson, Arizona, high school students are learning those skills. Students involved in the Southern Arizona Teen Aviation Program are involved in all parts of building an airplane, including this fuselage.
Anybody who's going to fly, if they work on this airplane, will learn all about the intricacies of what makes an airplane go. I mean, I think we're trying to give the kids an opportunity to get their hands on an airplane, see what an airplane's like, fly in an airplane, work with an airplane, build an airplane. Andriata
says one way the Air Force is looking to produce more pilots is by increasing efficiency in training.
Where we can decrease the course length, but not decrease the quality of the product that we're sending out there. So that's how we produce more.
Obasi says he loves aviation because there's lots of experiences you can have within the field.
We need more pilots. It's definitely something that can't be overlooked. It's a fun field.
By 2024, Air Force officials say their goal is to have all positions manned at 95%. For fighter pilot positions, the year they are looking at is 2029. Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
There are more than 100,000 potential voters in our state, but right now they're unable to vote because of past felony convictions, according to Restore Your Vote. Cronkite News reporter Gabriela Becerra tells us how the organization is helping to get those rights restored.
Restore Your Vote was developed by the Campaign Legal Center. Their goal is to ensure eligible voters have access to ballots.
Verified my registration after that, and I'll be voting on November 6th.
The last time Dennis Eckhoff voted was in 2000. He committed a Class 6 felony in Arizona back in 2003. He says getting his voting rights restored was frustratingly easy.
When I came across restoreyourvote.org, within a minute, I checked some boxes and answered some questions, and they let me know that my voting rights are currently restored and that I'd be good to proceed.
Restore Your Vote launched an online tool to help people with past convictions understand their voting rights. This tool helped Eckhoff, and now he is helping educate others about getting their rights back.
That's over 221,000 individuals that are disenfranchised due to felony convictions, and over 117,000 individuals who have the right to vote, just don't have the right information.
Speaker Victor Cervantes Jr. says Restore Your Vote has helped more than 500 people reestablish their voting rights. Although the process was easy for Eckhoff, organizer for ACLU Smart Justice Isis Gill says the restoration process has become more complicated.
Once you take into account that the restoration process varies from county to county, it becomes unbelievably obvious that the system was made intentionally difficult so that people could be disengaged.
Gill says the Campaign for Smart Justice has been holding clinics to help people get their voting and civil rights back.
Today to say that you all matter, your voices matter, and we will have your rights come back, come hell or high water.
According to Campaign Legal Center, any felony conviction will take away voting rights. Some people are able to get their rights back right away. Others have to apply to restore them. In the Broadcast Center, Gabriela Becerra, Cronkite News.
Freight trains can travel at speeds anywhere between 55 to 70 miles per hour, which means ignoring railroad signals can be dangerous and even deadly. Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein rode on a train in Goodyear to see firsthand the issues law enforcement see.
This morning, officers riding inside this locomotive observed behavior around railroad crossings. If they noticed anyone ignore signals or walk on the tracks, they dispatched nearby officers. This operation is part of Union Pacific's Crossing Accident Reduction Education and Safety Program, which promotes railroad crossing and pedestrian safety.
It's important because our goal is to educate the public on the dangers associated with the railroad and the dangers at railroad crossings.
This year in Arizona, 6 people have died on railroad crossings, according to the Federal Railroad Administration. One issue, trains give the illusion that they're going slower than they actually are.
They take at least a mile to stop, which is why police are urging pedestrians and motorists to slow down and obey signals when they come across a railroad crossing.
Goodyear Police Department spokeswoman Lisa Berry says it's important for people to follow the rules of the road.
So we want the public to make sure they understand the importance of stopping when the arms go down at a railroad crossing. We want the public to know that it's not safe to walk on the train tracks and just to follow the rules.
Brooks says Union Pacific continues to try and educate the dangers of the railroad and that people should always be paying attention to their surroundings.
Well, trains can go by at any time of the day or night, and obviously trains can come in either direction.
In Goodyear, Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
According to Brooks, residents interested in learning where railroad crossings are in their area can visit the Union Pacific website.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. The famous words uttered by Neil Armstrong as he took his first steps on the moon, making history as we know it today. Reporter Tanaya Williamson tells us how Neil Armstrong was connected to the state of Arizona.
The movie First Man follows Armstrong's journey to becoming an astronaut for NASA. It also shows how he and his family dealt with the dangers of space travel.
Well, we're not sure we're going to get onto the moon. A lot of things have to go right before that happens.
Before taking steps on the moon, astronauts had to take steps in places in northern Arizona.
Yeah, the geological training that they did was a huge part of their of the objectives of the first moon landing.
In 1964, Neil Armstrong and other astronauts headed to the Grand Canyon to learn more about the geology of the moon.
When they went to the moon, even though they didn't expect, to see a Grand Canyon, as it were,
they could look at different rock types and kind of have an understanding what they were.
You know, he gets off the ladder and takes those first steps. You know, shortly thereafter, he's grabbing a contingency sample and putting it in his pocket, his thigh pocket, so that if anything else went wrong, they could get home with at least that.
Along with learning what to take from the moon, astronauts had to learn what the moon looked like before taking flight.
I had used the airbrush a little bit, not really that much, and but I could make some drawings from that.
Artists like Patricia Bridges were hired to draw maps of the moon used by astronauts when they came to train at the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff.
I thought, well, that's, you know, that doesn't sound too bad. So, and then they set up a place for me to do the airbrush mapping too. I had an art degree, but I had no idea I'd be, doing something like that as my life work, basically, as it turned out.
As years went on, Neil Armstrong made it to the moon and made history for the United States. In 2012, Neil Armstrong returned to Flagstaff.
And it was a breathtaking presentation. And what we didn't know at the time is it was his last public appearance.
Neil Armstrong died just a few weeks after visiting the Lowell Observatory.
It's kind of a neat coming of circle. He was, here first for training in 1963. 49 years later, he comes back to celebrate his love of engineering, and that's his last public appearance right here in Arizona, here in Flagstaff.
In Flagstaff, Tanaya Williamson, Cronkite News.
The Lowell Observatory continues to celebrate the life and legacy of Neil Armstrong. The movie First Man is currently in theaters.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.